Hey everyone, welcome to the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. Reuben Frank and Dave Zangaro. Rube, it's May right now, which means OTAs this month.
It is May. You're excited. I know you love OTAs.
I love any time we get to watch football, and it's kind of like football in OTAs.
Well, there's training camp, and there's Sundays during the season. But yeah, it is. It's the first time we'll see the new guys out in the field, and it's always kind of cool seeing the draft picks in their uniforms for the first time, running around. You get your first look at them. So we'll be talking about that certainly over the next coming weeks.
Yeah, we'll get to see the draft picks at least, and some of the undrafted kids on the field Friday afternoon. The Eagles hold their 2-day rookie camp Friday and Saturday. We're not going to do any kind of special pod for that. We can talk about that next week. We're not going to get much out of that, honestly. We don't get a ton of time to watch them on the field, but it is the first time we'll see some of these guys in uniform.
Yeah, we won't be out there more than probably 15 minutes. So we don't get to see the whole thing until training camp. I guess the mandatory practices were out there for those.
They have one mandatory mini camp day this year.
Yeah,
June 10th.
June 10th. So yeah, but it's seeing those guys for the first time, and you just kind of see how they move, how they look in their uniform, and just they look like football players. So you're not going to get a lot from it, but you get more than you get on a Zoom call.
Yeah, sure. And all the guys will be in the building. We've talked to most of them on Zoom after they get drafted. And it's like, their whole world just changed and they don't have time to really think about it. And then here we are looking through them on a screen. And they're like, I don't want to do this. I'd rather be celebrating with my family, which I get. But we'll get a chance to talk to these guys a little bit more on Friday.
Yeah, I think that's got to be the hardest thing, Dave, doing that draft day Zoom call. I mean, it's hard enough being focused when you're celebrating and you just found out what team you're going to and your whole life is just kind of taken a huge step. And then you're not just doing an interview, but you're doing an interview on Zoom with a bunch of people that you don't know. Half the time the connection is bad. You can't even hear the questions. So yeah, it can't be the most natural thing. So it's always good to see him in person and get to know him a little bit.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the draft picks a little bit more today. I want to go through pick by pick, and you and I will try to figure out how much we expect them to play in their rookie seasons, what their role will be like. We have a bunch of questions to answer at the end, but this is our first pod since the official news that the Eagles picked up the 5th-year option on Jordan Davis. So we'll get into it kind of a little bit deeper, but give me your first reaction. Eagles pick up that 5th year on Jordan Davis.
Yeah, and we've talked about this over the last few weeks. There was no reason that they wouldn't. And the number is not a big number, relatively not a big number. And he's a good player. And they just don't, they value good players. And was he worth where he was drafted? Maybe not. But he's a really important guy. He played better and better as last year went along. And I think it's a smart move. It's a good move. What's the number? 13.9, 14 million.
It's 12.9.
12.9, I'm sorry. But like you said the other day, it's not what the Eagles ideally like to do. They don't like this 1 year. You can't put voidable years onto it. It's guaranteed as soon as he signs it. But the number is relatively small, and I still think there's a chance they get a long-term deal done at some point. He's a good, solid player, and they're better with him, and the price wasn't exorbitant, so there was really no reason it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by it based on the way they've spoken about Jordan Davis. Just knowing him and knowing that building, they weren't going to let him enter this final year of his contract the way it was. But I also don't think it was like an easy slam dunk decision either. I know Howie Roseman was on the radio and said it was an easy decision, but it's not a ton of money, but it is a significant amount of money based on the performance of Jordan Davis. I still think it's a pretty wise decision to pick it up because you're still hoping he gives you more and you're hoping he plays more this year, but he hasn't been, I think ideally you'd be in this spot saying, let's extend him long-term, let's lock him in, but he hasn't been at that level.
No, he's a tough one to try to figure out because if you say, is he worth where he was drafted? No, he wasn't. He was overdrafted. But by the same token, he's a unique player. He's a different kind of player. Um, he's durable. He's always out there. Now he doesn't play 70% of the snaps, but he's played more each year, I think. And
No, I mean, no, actually,
actually, last year he played fewer. Yeah,
yeah, he was at 45% in 2023. He was at 37% last year.
yeah, I remember that. But yeah, I think he's the kind of guy that you want on your team. And they've known this was coming up, and I think Howie has this plan. Everything went into this offseason as far as what free agents they were going to let go and what type of free agents they wanted to bring in on what kind of contracts and just how he was going to approach the whole thing. I think he's had this money set aside, and they knew what that number is going to be. They knew approximately what it would be last fall. So I believe him when he says it was an easy decision. He's not the kind of player you want to lose. He's not a Pro Bowler. He might never be a Pro Bowler. Probably won't be. But I think he's valuable, and I think he's hard to replace. And the number isn't crazy, so it all kind of made sense. Yeah, you wish he was more of a pass rusher. You wish he made more impact plays. I like what I saw from him in the postseason. Whether that's something that carries over to the rest of his career, who knows? But he's a solid guy, and they're a better defense. Look, he's a starter on the number one defense in the league and a Super Bowl championship defense. So valuable guy.
The one thing he hit there that I really think is a big deal is that he's a unique player. He fills a specific role in this defense, and maybe they're not in 5 down as much under Fangio as they were under Desai or even I don't know. I was saying Desai or Gannon going back that far. But he still is out there on early downs. He still is a run stuffer, a good run stuffer. Is he an elite run stuffer? I don't know. I think he's really good at it. I do think that by picking up this option, they're still like projecting involved here. Not only that he continues to develop as a player, but that they're going to play him more. I don't think you do this if you think he's going to be 37% over the next 2 years. But there are reasons to think he won't be, right? Because you look at, last year, why would you have him out there on 3rd down? You have Jalen Carter and Milton Williams, who are both better options to rush the passer when you get in the known pass. Without Milton Williams, now there are a lot of snaps up for grabs. I would think more Rajma that's going to take a jump, but hopefully Jordan Davis takes a jump too.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to expect that. I mean, still a young guy. We did see progress from him really the second half of last year and in the postseason. I think there might be something to that. He was getting more pressure in the postseason and really late in the regular season than he had. And, maybe it's a mistake to kind of project that over a full season, but it's there. And it's something he takes seriously. It's something he really works at. He wants to be more of a well-rounded player. He's never going to be an 8-sack guy. But look, Milton Williams had, 5 sacks last year, 6? No reason Jordan Davis can't have 4 or 5 sacks in the season. He had 2 in the postseason. What did he have last year in the regular season? 1 or 2?
He had 1 in the regular season, just 1 quarterback hit in 17 games in the regular season. And then he has a sack in the NFC Championship game and a sack in the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So, you'd like to see those numbers go up. And I think it's possible, but he's got to go do it. And you're right. I would be surprised if what's his career high in snap percentage? Is it that 46 from 23?
45% in 2023. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to see that around at least 50%, I would think.
To get it back to 45% would be good. I mean, he played 519 snaps 2 years ago, 388 last year. I mean, I think he needs to play a little bit more at least.
Yeah, I do too. And now he gets credit for being, I don't think he's ever missed a game. He's one of those guys he's durable. You like that about him.
He played 13 as a rookie.
But since he became a star, I think he's the only guy to
Okay.
start every game in the last 3 years, I think. But yeah, you're a better team with him, and I think they're still bullish on him being able to take his game to another level. I think you're right. They don't do this if they think what he's been so far is all he's going to be.
And Howie's talked about that. It's a position where we've seen guys get better over the course of a long period of time, especially like these bigger defensive tackles.
Like
Uh,
Milton. I think Milton's
well,
an example of that.
maybe, yeah. I was thinking more like of a typical nose tackle, like Dexter Lawrence. And I'm not saying he's going to turn into Dexter Lawrence. That would be really pie in the sky. But Lawrence is the most productive body type like that in the NFL, and it took him a few years to get there.
Yes, yeah. So you're talking about those kind of like 330 type.
Yeah, like a guy who's viewed as a run stuffer who,
Yeah.
ultimately becomes more than that in the league.
Yeah. And I think he's got a chance.
Like Vita Vea, you look, didn't have 4 sacks in a season until his 4th year. Dexter Lawrence was similar. So like these big bodied guys, they can still develop as pass rushers. Now, though, both of those guys did have more production than Davis in their first 3 seasons, but I think you look at those players as like, okay, there's another level to this if he can reach it. Maybe his level's lower than Dexter Lawrence. That's fair because Dexter Lawrence is kind of a unicorn, but I think there are reasons to think he can get better still.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly the effort's there, the work ethic's there. He's got all the intangibles, and he has gotten better. I think a lot of these guys, like, how much was he asked? Like, they didn't need him to rush the passer at Georgia. They had like 20 other guys doing it. So I think a lot of these guys come into the league and it's new to them. They start learning pass rush moves, and um, I think in college you get by the sacks you get are through sheer power and just overwhelming guys, and he can do that here and there. But um, and I think he's a guy that's going to keep working on his craft, and um, I really think he's got a chance to get to take it to another level. Maybe not be a Pro Bowler, but be a guy who can do more than just stop the run. And I think he's
Yeah.
pretty good at that.
And when we talk about his production in the playoffs, I think one of the most encouraging things is that he was in the right physical shape
Yeah.
after a full regular season to be able to be productive in the playoffs. Because whenever we talk about Jordan Davis, I think a lot of it does come back to, is he in shape to go the distance? Is he taking care of his body the way they need him to? Is he doing all the extra conditioning work that they require of him? And I think that's always going to be tied to him.
Yeah, you remember how he just fell off the face of the earth in 23, second half of the year. I think
He
that was
chased down Josh Allen in that Bills game, and that was it.
yeah, he did. He did, but I think that was a big part of it. And um, sometimes it takes a few years for all those things to click, and he certainly gets all the support possible from, the Eagles have a nutrition staff and I mean, they have a sleep expert, and obviously in the cafeteria, they're getting healthy food, but there's only so much you can do. But it seems like that part of it has clicked for him. I mean, for him to still be healthy and productive, 21 games into this 20 games into the season, 21 games into the season. I think they played a wild card game, um, wild card round game. Is that's a great point, and I think that's really encouraging.
What was the distinction there between wild card and wild card round?
Well, they won their division, so I don't
Yeah,
I don't consider them a wild card team, but they won their
I got
division. And they
well,
didn't get a bye, so they played in the wild card round, but I don't think of them as a wild card team.
okay. I was just wondering what your brain was doing
Don't
there.
you think? I mean, I don't think it's fair
I
to
get
call.
that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
Yeah. I do want to point out before we get too far that this is for the 2026 season. If that wasn't clear, he enters the final year of his rookie contract in 25. So no matter what, he was going to be here in 25. This is about the following season. So it is like that that kind of big chunk of changes out there in the future. It's guaranteed now. These used to not be fully guaranteed at signing. They are now. They're guaranteed. So they're on the hook for 13 mil in 2026.
yeah, and the cap's going to go up, So it'll be a smaller
Yeah, I
percentage.
looked it up. There are 27 defensive tackles making 13 plus mil per year. So he'll be under that still next year.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but relatively it's manageable.
Mm-hmm. And they're going to need him this year. I mean, you lose Milton, it's a big loss. So you have Jalen Carter, you have Jordan Davis, you have Mo Rajma, and then we'll see about Ty Robinson. We'll bring up him in a little bit when we go through the draft picks. But I think the two guys who are going to have to see the most biggest bump in their snap counts are Morrow and Jordan Davis.
No question about it. Yeah. Yeah. So more Ojimo, I mean, we don't know. I think he can handle it. I don't know if he's going to be a 40 snaps a game guy, but
Amazing. Him and Jordan Davis played the exact same number of snaps last year in the regular season.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then Morrow played significantly more in the playoffs, I believe.
It's a good group. I mean, losing Milton is big, but I mean, that's a talented young group right there when you look at what they have. So,
and you got to hope Jalen Carter can play that number again. I mean, that's not an easy ask, him playing over 80% of the snaps.
And that's an amazing story in itself. I mean, there was such a knock on him coming out of school that, he would wear down late in games, and you really had to watch his snap counts. I mean, he was a beast late in games. The biggest play he made in his life was at the end of a playoff game. 2 of them back to back.
Yeah, he played 79% of the snaps last year without playing in that regular season finale.
Yeah, there were some games he was wasn't he close to 90% in a few games?
Over 90%. He was at 95% for a good stretch in this season.
Yeah.
And then you look in the playoffs, and the funny thing is in the playoffs, he didn't need to, but he did still. So the Green Bay game, 62 of 66. The Rams game, 69 of 71. The Washington game, they had a big lead, but he was still 65 of 75. And then KC, he was 41 of 56. He played 88% of their snaps in the playoffs.
That's incredible. And he didn't have to. I'm just checking total interior defensive lineman snaps last year, and without playing in that 17th game, he was 4th. He was 4th in the league in defensive tackle or interior lineman total snaps.
Who was he behind?
Zach Allen, the dude from the Cowboys whose name I can never pronounce.
Osa Odigizua?
Yeah, exactly. And Adam Butler from the Raiders. Percentage-wise, I don't know why StatHead won't let me stack this by percentage, but he was actually second in percentage behind Zach Allen.
Mm-hmm.
It was 80. He played 83.5%. Carter played 79.4%, but they both played 16 games. So, yeah, that's a lot of snaps. I mean, you go down the list, and I mean, guys like, Deron Payne, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, they're all in the mid 70s, high 60s, Quinnen Williams. So for Jalen Carter to play that many snaps when he came out of school, and that was the big knock on him, was his durability, not his durability, but his ability to play late in games. It's remarkable, the player he's become.
I remember talking to Carter last spring, and the only thing he kept saying was conditioning, because that was being hammered home by the coaching staff. There were early signs that they were going to play him an awful lot. Heck, the sign was there when you look back at Vic's history with some of these defensive tackles. Just Christian Wilkins 2 years ago in Miami played a ton. So we thought that JC would have to play a lot, and he did.
Yeah, and I think the coaching staff, the nutrition, they all deserve so much credit for turning him into a player that can do that. I mean, it's one thing to have talent. It's another thing to, get into the conditioning that you've never been in for that talent to completely come out. If they hadn't done that, I don't know if they beat the Rams. I mean, if he didn't become that player, I don't know if any of that postseason run happens.
That's a fair question.
Yeah.
All right, you want to move on from the Jordan Davis talk?
Yeah.
Let's go through the Eagles draft picks. They drafted 10 players. I do this every year, before we even see them on the field, you try to project what's their role going to be in this season, the 2025 season. We know Nick Sirianni, really big on roles. He sits down every player just before the season starts and they go over it, which I think is a really cool thing that this coaching staff does, that I think it will be wise for other staffs to start doing, other head coaches to do, because you really lay out the expectations for a player, and you say, hey, your role could change, but for right now, this is what we need you to be for this football team.
And I think I guess the corollary to that is he gets guys to understand the importance of that role, even if it's just special teams, or even if it's just one special team. They don't come in looking at it like, oh, I'm just doing punt coverage. I mean, it's like, I'm going to be the best in the league at punt coverage. And he really gets guys to buy into whatever that role is. So it's understanding and embracing your role and making the most out of that role.
Yeah. So let's start with Jihaad Campbell, first round pick, 31st overall. A few layers to this projection that make it a little more difficult. I think first, obviously, is the injury. He's coming off that shoulder surgery. When is he going to be available? Is he going to be 100% when he is available? We just don't know that yet. So that's kind of the one thing hanging over him before we even start with, where he's lining up, what position is he? Is he healthy? And it's something we just don't know the answer to yet.
Yeah, we can speculate all we want, but we just have no idea. It might be a while before we get an idea, but I think once he's 100%, and they're historically really conservative with these things, they're not going to bring him back when he's 85 or 90%. There's no reason to rush it and jeopardize this guy. Wait till he's 100%. He's got full strength in there, mobility and clearance. I think once that happens.
Well, wait, before we get there, I do want to bring this up if
Yeah.
you're going to move on from the injury. In that interview with WIP, Howie Roseman was asked about Campbell's injuries and why he may have fallen. And he talked up their medical staff a little bit. He puffed his chest out and said, hey, no, like our medical staff, proof's in the pudding. They've been really good. We trust them. But then he also brought up Cooper Jean. And he said, remember last year were obviously a little different. It wasn't like a pre-existing injury. Cooper had a pre-existing, but then he has the hamstring and he doesn't play for the first 4 games of the season. Howie brought that up on his own and said, we're going to be patient with this guy. And you see how that worked out last year with Cooper. So I don't know if that's necessarily a one-to-one type comparison, but he was definitely preaching patience with Campbell.
Yeah. I mean, I would think if they get him, and obviously we don't know if there's going to be a bye week at week 5, but I think if you can get him for game 5, I think you got to be thrilled with that. I would think.
I don't know. I mean, you would hope to have him sooner than that.
You would hope to have him sooner, but I think if he misses 4 games with this, and you have him 100% for week 5 or game 5, I think that's
and beyond. Yeah,
yeah. But I think once he is healthy and once he's at full go, he's going to play a lot. I don't know where it's going to be, but he's going to be a starter. Maybe not in actual starting, but in snaps. I mean, he's going to play a lot, and I can't wait to see what that looks like because I don't know. But you don't draft a guy in the first round, even at the end of the first round, to not have a major role.
Yeah, and they're going to bring him along slowly, you would think, even if he is healthy. You remember last year, Quinyon Mitchell ended up being a week 1 starter, but early in camp, he was not. He was with the second team, then they made him first team nickel, then he's playing outside, first team, he's rotating, and then eventually he was just, all right, we're not moving him. He's one of the starters. I think they made him earn that. I think they would make Carter do that. I think they would make Campbell do that a little bit, but I'm of the belief they're going to start him off at off-ball linebacker. And there might be a really pressing need at the beginning of the season if he's healthy. So, I think there's an avenue here where he just has to start off the ball from week 1 in place of Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, and we don't know his timeline either. So there's just a lot of unknowns at that position. It could be Trot. I mean, I don't know. So, we'll see what that looks like as the summer goes along, but it certainly could be the case. If he's ahead of Nakobe's timeline, if he's available before Nakobe, yeah, that's who you'd want out there.
Yeah, I think so. And look, I don't have any information about their specific injuries, but like based on what we know of the injury Nakobe suffered and what we think with Jihaad Campbell, I think that's a very viable possibility that Campbell's ready and they say, yeah, sorry, Trot, we like you, but this kid is a first round talent. We're going to put him out there with Zach Bond. And then hopefully you get Nakobe back at some point, and then you figure out what to do. If you really like Campbell's versatility, then you have some options. You can play him at edge. You can put Nakobe back in the lineup. But I also think there's a possibility if he's out there and he's playing well, it might be tough to take him out of the lineup.
Yeah, that's true. We just saw that with, in the postseason at that position. So, yeah, I think this is a good problem to have when these guys are all healthy, and we certainly hope Nakobe at some point is the player he was last year. That's a lot of talent at a position that they don't care about.
If you're wondering, Campbell is 7th in Defensive Rookie of the Year odds.
Interesting.
Yeah, behind Abdul Carter, Jalen Walker, Travis Hunter, Mykel Williams, Shamar Stewart, Mason Graham, and he's tied with Mike Green at plus 1,500.
Is Travis Hunter in the odds for Offensive Rookie also?
I didn't look that up. That's funny. I can look that up right now. That's a good question. He should be. I mean, he's unless the maybe these odds tell you they know something about where he's lining up.
Imagine if he won both.
I mean, that'd be a pretty incredible pick. I don't think he'll be able to play enough on both to.
I mean, on defense, if you can make a few interceptions and you don't have to play a ton. But yeah, that would be tough to do. Dave's looking up his offensive odds.
I don't know if I can in Pennsylvania.
You want to just drive home, look it up?
Yeah, let me drive across the bridge real quick.
Off to Jersey.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry.
All right, it's okay.
Yeah, but that is fascinating. If he's, you put money on him both ways and just hope he ends up starring at one of them.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I thought it was notable that Campbell's that high in those odds.
Yeah, and maybe that tells you they know something about when he'll be back. They know.
They seem to know.
They seem to know.
All right, second round pick, Andrew Mukuba. I think the path is there for him to be a day one starter.
Totally agree. Yeah, I think that's the plan. I think that's what they want. And we'll see what he looks like in training camp. And I'd like Sidney Brown, but I think if this kid comes in and does what they think he's going to do, he's a starter.
I think so too. I think they're going to make him earn it. I think the first time we see this team line up at OTAs, I'd be pretty surprised if he's in there with the first team. I don't think that's going to be the case. You're going to have Reed Blankenship out there, and then you're going to either have Sidney Brown or Tristan McCollum next to him. Now, if it's Tristan McCollum, that does not bode well for Sidney Brown.
Yeah, because Tristan McCollum, and I don't want to, be too negative about him. He's a nice kid, but he's not going to be the starter. Sidney Brown would have a chance to, I think, compete, put up a pretty good competition for that job. Well, Tristan McCollum wouldn't. So if it's Tristan McCollum, if he's ahead of Sidney, then the job belongs to Mukuba.
You think so? He'd be the placeholder at that point. But if Sidney's out there and there's a fair chance of that, I wouldn't rule out Sidney Brown completely. He has 2 years of NFL experience. He has a year in this defense, even though he didn't play very much as a second-year player. You can explain away him being buried on the depth chart behind McCollum and Maddox because he was injured at the beginning of 2024. Still don't love that for his chances, right? But you understand it a little bit. He was hurt. He was out completely. He was on the PUP, so he was not playing at all. And then Vic's got to be able to trust you, and he's not going to be able to build that trust with you that deep into the process. So I understand all of that, but just by the draft pick, you draft a guy in the second round, late second round, but still second round, and Vic Fangio is a DC in place when you draft him, tells you that, okay, Vic likes this guy. I think the writing's on the wall a little bit.
Yeah, I do think Sidney has a chance to look, he's in his third year. He knows what he's doing. He's been around. He's very confident. He's always been a good practice player. He shows up. And then you have a rookie coming in who's just kind of learning what it means to be a pro and how to practice and how to study, how to watch film. I think Sydney could be the early leader in that. And, until Mukuba kind of figures it all out. So that's going to make it more of an intriguing. I don't think Sydney's going to go out there after waiting a year for this opportunity, if he does get it, and not play well. I think he's a good practice player. He's the kind of player that makes splash plays. So he shows up, and it could be a pretty intriguing battle.
It's probably going to be the most fun battle of the summer.
Yeah.
I don't know how there are other ones for a team that won a Super Bowl. There are some spots up for grabs on this team. Maybe you like the corner battle between Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson. Maybe you like right guard Tyler Steen versus Kenyon Green and maybe a couple others. But for my money, it's the safety battle. You have a former third-round pick who was 66 overall, by the way. It's not like they're always going to be labeled second and third round, but Sydney was taking just 2 picks after the Mukuba slot. So relatively the same draft status. One was drafted by under a previous DC. One is drafted under this DC, who I would think has kind of a big say in the building. I think it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, I do too.
And their play styles are fun too.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, that's really the battle of the summer. And you're right. There are other ones because they lost so many guys on defense, it just kind of creates competition for those spots. But yeah, this should be a fun one. And I think Sydney can play. I think Mukuba is going to win that ultimately, but it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, but if Mukuba does not win that job, I think he would then become the top backup safety and perhaps even the top backup nickel.
Yeah, that's possible. Yeah, that would make sense.
Mm-hmm. And, in that case, we'd probably get his special teams allotment bumped up a little bit too.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break and we'll go through the other draft picks on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we've got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store and NissanUSA.com today.
All right, we're back on the Eagle Eye Podcast. We're going to pick up in the 4th round, their 3rd pick overall, Ty Robinson, defensive tackle out of Nebraska. We were talking about defensive tackle rotation earlier in the scope of that Jordan Davis 5th-year option, but Milton Williams is gone. That's 500 snaps last year that the Eagles have to replace. I think the bulk of those are going to be Moro Ojima and they're going to be Jordan Davis, but I think Ty Robinson has a legit shot to be in the mix and get in the rotation.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. A 4th rounder, it's not a slam dunk, but I think if he has a good camp, I think he's going to be part of that rotation. I think that would make sense. I think that's why he's here. The 3rd round is kind of the most fun to project because it could be a starter, could be a backup. 2nd round, you want that guy to be a starter. 1st round, that guy better be a starter. 4th round, you get into he's going to make the team, but where does he fit in? And yeah, with a good camp, I see him fitting in and having a role.
I have to veer us off track a little bit just because what you said there just jogged my memory a little bit. Howie Roseman talking about day 3 picks. It sounds like there's been a mild philosophy change. He said, we're shooting for starters on day 3. And if we, they have all these picks and if we end up with 2 or 3 of them, I'm paraphrasing. He's like, we're throwing darts and that's a big win for us. Ultimately, getting special teams players and backups, in my opinion, is a win on day 3. Do you think them shooting for starters changes anything? Do you think they're less likely to take a guy who might just be a solid down the fairway type of player versus shooting for traits on day 3 these days?
I think you can get that from what he said, but I think he was also delirious at that point. I'm not sure he knew exactly what he was saying. I mean, because in the past, like he said, everybody we draft, we want them to be a starter. You know, we look at them as a potential. So we don't want anybody coming in like we want you to be a good backup. So I don't know. I don't think that distinction is a very likely one. Like that, he might have a better chance to be a starter, but not help on special teams. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but
did it catch your attention a little bit when he said it or no?
It did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it's changing the way they evaluate, but it was something that in the back of my mind a little bit. All right, so we look at the snaps from last year, and this is his regular season. Jalen Carter, 831, Milton Williams, 501, Jordan Davis, 388, Moro Ujima, 388, Thomas Booker, 166. Where do you think Ty Robinson can end up this year in terms of snaps?
You know, I think if you get 15 to 20 snaps out of him, so, you know, like around 300, which, you know, I think between 250 and 350, you'd be happy with if everyone's healthy.
Yeah, I think that, you know, it had the Eagles drafted a defensive tackle in round 1 or 2, that player probably leapfrogs Moro. And then you're hoping that guy becomes more of the guy who takes over the role for Milton. But because they didn't draft a player in those first couple of rounds, I think it's more reasonable that Moro and Jordan kind of fill that gap left by Milton. And now we're talking about who fills the Moro Ujima role, right? Instead of who fills the Milton Williams role.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that could be Ty Robinson. 5th round pick, Mac McWilliams, cornerback at a UCF, not UFC. Man, they got a kicker, and he'll beat the crap out of you out of UCF, formerly UAB. How much do you think he's going to play as a rookie?
Not a whole lot, I wouldn't think. You never know. I mean, look, there's question marks at corner, and you know they lost a lot at that position. So, you know, but I think they like Ricks. Obviously, I think they like Keeley. And we'll see what happens. It's crazy to have that turnover at that one position. So I think he's got a shot. But I don't think it's real likely he'll play a ton on defense.
His best chance to play on defense is as the backup nickel. They don't really have a pure backup nickel right now. They have a pretty easy answer at backup outside corner. Whoever basically loses that position battle for the starting corner between Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson, that guy probably becomes the top outside backup. They don't really have an ideal slot backup unless it's Mukuba, but we think he's going to be starting.
Exactly.
I mean, maybe Sidney Brown, but he's kind of a different. I mean, maybe in sub packages, but not base nickel.
He's not a base nickel guy.
You get what I mean?
Yeah. I don't think Keely Ringo is going to lose that battle. By the way, that's just my 2 cents. I'm pretty high on him. Can't wait to see what he looks like playing, getting that opportunity this summer that we think he'll get. But yeah, I think that's true. If Mukuba's starting at that safety, you need that backup inside corner, and I think McWilliams can probably handle that.
Yeah, he played some special teams in college, also returned some punts. I don't think he'll be the full-time punt returner, but he'll get some reps in practice, and you never know. Maybe the backup punt returner.
Could be.
5th round pick again, Smael Mondon Jr. from Georgia. I mean, this guy has got special teams ace written all over him.
And that's his role. I mean, if it's not, then something's horribly wrong somewhere else, but that's going to be his role, and I think he'll be good at it.
Yeah, I mean, 6'2", 224, ran a 4.58, 10-yard split, 1.52, broad jump of 10.10, like has all the athleticism in the world. And playing at Georgia, we've seen it with the other Georgia guys come through. Even their starters play on special teams under Kirby Smart, which kind of gives you a leg up when you get in the league and you might not be a high draft choice. You're used to it. According to the 33rd team, he played 425 special team snaps at Georgia in his career. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And played on not last year. That'd be insane.
I know.
I don't know if they even play that many. But in his career, 425 and on all 4 units.
Yeah, I know they kick off a lot. But yeah, I think all those Georgia guys really embrace special teams, and it's really cool. Like, I mean, Nolan came in and he's like, I love playing special teams.
And late in the year, they started putting some more starters back on special teams. Nolan was a big one. When they were getting leaky, they were like, man, we got to shore this up. And Nolan was the first guy they turned to.
He's good too. He's a good special teamer. Yeah, I think that's where they really missed Devin Allen. But yeah, that's his role. And, you know, you got to come in and have the right attitude. And those Georgia guys seem to when it comes to teams.
Yeah. I think like we look at the end of the year and he's going to be up there among the team leaders and special team snaps. Yeah. Drew Kendall, 5th round pick, their final 5th round pick. Center guard, they list him as, has only played center. I think in order for him to be active on game day, he's going to have to show something at guard, because it's very rare that you have a one position backup active on game days.
He might have to show something at guard to be on the team.
Perhaps, yeah. I think, like, can they keep all 10 of these picks? Probably not. You saw what happened last year. They cut Dylan McMahon. They got him to their practice squad, and he was there for like 2 days before the Rams signed him to their active, and he hasn't been back.
Yeah, and your 7th round picks are the guys that you usually are. They're not going to make the team, although certainly Eagles have some that were, but they don't have any 7s. So it's going to be a couple 6s. I just don't think he's a guard. I think if he was a legit guard, you even say, does he have a shot to play right guard? But he's really a center. If he's on the team,
I will say I think he has the build to play guard more than McMahon did last year.
Yeah, he was kind of a pure center also. So yeah, we'll see. I think he could be headed for the practice squad.
He wouldn't be my top candidate from this list to go to the practice squad, but I get what you're saying there. How about Kyle McCord? If he plays this year, things have gone horribly wrong, but it really is about that competition for the 3rd string job.
Yeah, and I would think we'd have the edge over Dorian Thompson-Robinson, just based on Dorian Thompson-Robinson's history playing in the league. I mean, he's got 11 interceptions and 1 touchdown. It's like the worst ratio since like the 1940s. But, who knows? College quarter, it's so tough to evaluate these guys. McCord threw so much in college, so he's a big-time, high-volume passer. I could see him looking really good. I mean, he wasn't the most accurate guy at Syracuse, but, we'll see what he looks like. But I would think he'd be the number 3. I think he'd be the favorite for that.
Yeah, I think so too. They drafted him, so DTR they got him back from a team that has 500 quarterbacks. So, but you know what I was thinking about the other day? Every quarterback I've seen drafted, and like they get drafted, and you see them in their first practice. At least the ones I've been around, you can always tell pretty quick whether there's something there or not.
It's true.
Can you remember a time where you were like dead wrong seeing a quarterback early? Like, and that doesn't mean they won't get better. I mean, Jalen obviously is the perfect example. Guys can get better in their careers, but like even early on, you're like, okay, yeah, there's something there.
Yeah, he looked good at times. He looked really good as a rookie in camp. Clayton Thorson he was
like the opposite, right? Like we knew pretty quick it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, like after 1 throw.
And then Tanner McKee was a 6, and we saw him early on. And you go, oh,
yeah, he can play.
Yeah, it's at least in my experience, and I don't have as much experience as you, and I haven't covered other teams, but like you can kind of tell whether quarterback's going to stick around or not.
That's an interesting concept, and I don't disagree. I'm going to think if I can come up with an exception. But yeah, I think our first impressions have really been spot on with quarterbacks.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that's just the guys the Eagles have had in.
Maybe
it might not be that case. It might not be that way around the league. But I remember like when the Eagles brought in Tebow, even some of the players were like, what the heck is this? Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. 6th round now. Actually, we've been in the 6th round because we got there with McCord. But Myles Hinton from Michigan, Can he beat out Kendall Lamb to be the swing tackle?
I think it's possible. I think Kendall Lamb's probably the scratch there, but without having ever seen either of them practice, you got a shot.
Yeah, and Lamb's coming off that back surgery from last year, missed the end of the season. He's well over 30 now. So, yeah.
Sure they
And
do.
Hinton played like he's the perfect swing tackle candidate because he played almost as many games on the left side as he did the right in college. He played it was
It was very
19
close.
at right tackle and 12 at left tackle in college.
Yeah. He's another one. He's got a chance. I mean, Kendall, you got a veteran guy. I mean, I think they always are going to want the rookie to win that job over the 1 year older veteran free agent guys they brought in.
And last year they actually played rookies, which was new.
And it worked.
It did work. Cameron Williams, 207 overall. To me, he was like a great value add developmental prospect. I don't think he's going to play much in 2025.
And he's another one you think practice squad's pretty likely.
Maybe. He's one who, if they cut him, we're going to have all that hand-wringing. Like, are they going to get him to the practice squad or are they not?
If you don't, it's not going to change your Super Bowl odds. But
But he's a developmental prospect who, they drafted 2 of these tackles who are super tradesy, and you have a couple years now before Lane Johnson hangs them up. You have a couple years to develop these kids. I think it's unlikely that either of them become the long-term replacement, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and when you're talking about Cameron Williams, I think it's more likely he's on the practice squad this year than replaces Lane.
This year, sure. Okay.
Ever. But yeah.
That's fair. And then 2 picks later, Antwaun Powell-Ryland, edge rusher from Virginia Tech. Can he get in the rotation? It's kind of a crowded room right now.
Yeah, probably not. I think it's one position where a late round pick can find his way. So I wouldn't rule it out, but long shot.
Okay, so you have Nolan Smith, Jalix Hunt, and I'll put Azeez Ojulari. Those 3, I think we feel pretty confident they're going to be in the rotation. After that, Bryce Huff, we just don't know. I'm still of the opinion he will not be here. We differ on that. Right? Are you still on that side?
Okay. He'll be here for the start of the season. Yes.
I do not. And Josh Uche, I don't know. He was, I think, a decent add as a veteran, has had some production, hasn't had it in a little while. But after that, yeah, I think APR has a chance to be in that mix.
Yeah, like I said, it's a position where I think you can contribute early. It's not like, I mean, there's somewhere you can't, but I think he's got a shot.
And if he doesn't play much on defense, you would think special teams would be an option for him as well. But he could be even if he's on the roster, he could be a healthy scratch based on if they have other players who they think are going to be better on teams than him.
Yeah, I mean, that's a position where there's a lot of questions. I mean, it's just there's a lot of bodies, but I'm really curious to see how it plays out.
Yeah. All right, that was fun. I like going through those. We'll get to see those guys in person on Friday, and I'm excited about that.
Can't wait.
Want to do some questions?
Yeah, let's take some questions.
All right, eagle-eyed NBCUni.com. QR code is on the screen. We'll leave it up there for a few minutes. First one from Rich. The Kyle McCord pick intrigues me on several levels, but particularly how it may position the Eagles in a year. You often mention how Howie is always looking down the road since he doesn't have to prove himself in the present to maintain job security. If McCord makes the team as a backup and proves over the course of OTAs, training camp, in-season practices that he will be a capable number 2 to Hurts, might that make Tanner McKee more available to trade next offseason for an experienced player or package with a draft pick or 2 and move up in the 2026 draft?
Yeah, it would make it more likely that you would trade Tanner McKee because assuming Tanner McKee either doesn't play this year or plays and plays well. Now, if Tanner McKee plays and doesn't play well, and remember, he beat the Giants, so you try to keep it in perspective. But I think you could get a pick for him, and I think if you feel good about where the rookie is, and you're impressed with him, and you're okay with him being a number 2 going into next year, and McKee has played well and has some value, and you can get a 3 for him, there's a chance.
Yeah, if it's a 3, maybe. But they were also hesitant to make McKee the backup that early in his career, and McKee was really impressive. So we're projecting that McCord's that impressive.
That was a tricky thing because I think everyone knew McKee was better than Pickett, but I think you're opening up a can of worms if you make that move like late in the year.
But they didn't have to get Pickett at all, is my point.
They didn't have to.
They didn't have to acquire Kenny Pickett at all.
No, but I mean, at that point, I'm not sure they knew what they had in Tanner. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. This is a question about next offseason. Yeah. Like, we're not going to know what they have in McCord.
No, but they'll presumably have an idea. And I think they have an idea about Tanner, but yeah, you don't really know. I mean, and who knows? He might get in a couple games at the end of the year. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's the point, though, is right. If they were to trade Tanner McKee, then either McCord's your backup next, and we're talking about next offseason. McCord's your backup, or you sign a veteran, or you trade for a veteran. But you probably wouldn't trade for a veteran if you're trading. You know what I mean? You'd probably have to sign some guy on the street to be your backup at that point. Yeah. In which case, unless you're getting great value for McKee, you probably let him play out the final year, right?
Yeah. Wow, how'd that happen?
Sorry. You good?
Yeah.
All right. Next one is from Avery. Good afternoon, fellas. I was listening to an analyst talk about the Eagles trading up 1 spot to take Jihaad Campbell, and that they hadn't seen that before and couldn't think of a reason to do so. This is the theory I came up with. The Eagles give up one of their 5th-round picks to move up 1 spot to give the illusion that Campbell was a prospect the Eagles were itching to get. The two of you have stated that they can't possibly use all of their 5th-round picks due to limited roster spots and the lack of value in the round. So would that make the 5th-round pick they gave up expendable enough to use for a PR move? And yes, Rube, I know you hate this kind of question.
No, I don't hate it, because it's something we've all wondered about. I mean, at first I was thinking Howie just wants to get rid of picks. He just doesn't want so many picks. And he did that. And then he just got a bunch more picks after that. So that kind of rained on that parade. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't get it. I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of take them at their face value here. What they said is that they wanted to trade up to make sure no one else did, and they got the player. Yeah. Because I do believe them now. I was skeptical at first that they were trying to move up to get Jihaad Campbell, but then they released that video of Jeffrey Lurie saying, we've been trying to get you for an hour. I'm all about a conspiracy theory. I don't think it goes that high. I don't think they're getting the owner to put stuff out on tape to propel this conspiracy. So I do think that was legit. I think they were trying to trade up. Whether it was all the way up to 22, I don't know. But I think they were trying to trade up to get Campbell. So if you've done all that and you can ensure you get him by moving up 1 spot and there's no question about it, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, they would have gotten him at 32, but
unless another team was willing to trade in with the Chiefs. Maybe there was maybe the Chiefs said, hey, I think this team's trying to come up and get your guy. We'll take the 5th from you instead of a 6 from them or whatever.
But I mean, Brett Veach doesn't have to make that deal.
He doesn't, but he wanted the value because he's going to get his guy regardless.
Yeah.
I mean, he can say, maybe no one's calling Brett Veach, but he's saying, hey, Howie, these teams are calling trying to get your guy. You want to move up with us? We'll take that 5th round off your hands.
It's possible. It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, as far as it being an elaborate.
It's kind of funny to have this kind of gamesmanship between two guys that are really good friends and work together for I don't know how many years till, for a decade.
A 5th round pick's a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
And as much as I would love to buy into the elaborate PR stunt, yeah, I don't think that's likely.
It's fun to think about, though.
It is. And I like the thought process. Next is David. Good day, gentlemen. Thank you for answering my question the last time I sent one in. Can you explain why Antwaun Powell-Ryland fell so far in the draft? He led college football in sacks over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think I did a lot of reading about him, and I mean, that's an example of teams that just don't think the skill set that got him those sacks is going to translate to the NFL. That he just doesn't have the athleticism, the moves. He got those sacks by through hard work. A lot of it was level of competition. He didn't get the sacks through moves that would translate to the NFL or athletic traits that would transfer to the NFL. So you love the production, and yeah, I think he had, what was it, 25 and a half sacks over the last 2 years, I believe. But it's not like he's got a skill set that on the outside translates to the league.
Yeah, it was funny because they drafted him. I knew the name and I knew that he had production. And then you look at the athletic profile, and that's really impressive too. So you're going, okay, the RAS is really high, relative athletic score. He has all this production. What am I missing? You dig a little deeper, and maybe like the get off isn't there. That suddenness in his game. I actually went back and watched him a little bit. I turned on the Rutgers game because he was playing the offensive tackle the Eagles signed, and they were going at it a little bit. And I think some of that he has some stuff that you like. Definitely, I think he has a chance to fight his way into the rotation. But I think that was the reason for it.
Yeah, but it is it's always interesting when you see that, and yeah, I mean the production is intriguing.
Want to do one more here?
Sure.
Okay. Next one is from Andrew. I know we picked up Mac McWilliams in the draft and added Adoree Jackson in free agency, but I'd still like to see how we make a splash and add someone to run opposite of Quinyanamo and give support to Keely Ringo. I had a quick look at available free agents and saw a couple names that stood out, although probably too expensive, but still fun to think about. What are your thoughts on a reunion with Rasul Douglas? I've always been a fan of his since West Virginia and thought it was unfortunate he wasn't utilized better under Jim Schwartz. However, what about us signing a former Eagles son, Asante Samuel Jr.? Any other thoughts on the cornerback position?
What year did Rasul come out? 17?
Yeah, he was at 99th overall in 17.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think they're going to bring in any more cornerbacks. He's an interesting name. I've always liked him. He's a physical guy, nice career, kind of around the ball, makes plays. But I just don't think that's the kind of guy they're going to add at this point, just financially and depth chart wise, maybe. I don't know what kind of contract he's looking for at this point. Older guy now, so I'd be surprised.
Yeah, I think they probably just want to look at this group in camp, see what they have, and then if there's a need at that point, maybe you try to pull off a trade, or I think at a bunch of these positions, honestly, where you have some competitions, you don't really know who the starter is. You get in the camp and you take a look at them, and then if you don't feel comfortable, you make the move, whether it's free agency or a trade at that point.
Yeah. I would have been really impressed if he said he was a fan of Rasul Douglas going back to his days at Nassau Community College in Uniondale. That would have impressed me.
And Asante Samuel Jr., we mentioned they don't really have like a backup nickel right now.
Yeah.
He's a guy who only played 4 games last year, but has been talented. Like,
yeah,
he was a second round pick. He's
well, we're adding all these sons of NFL players.
Yeah, you did a little dive on that. What'd you find out?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. They've drafted a bunch of sons of players. Raheem Brock's dad played in the league. They drafted a guy named Hank Bulla, whose dad played in the league and was a coach of the Bills for a while. Obviously, Trot and these two guys this year. Casey Matthews. There's no guarantee they're going to be as good as their dads, and most times they aren't. But it was interesting how he said it's not why we draft a guy, but it is something that you take into account. These guys are comfortable around the league. They've grown up around football, and they've gotten good instruction in their, a good basis for as far as coaching. So it's interesting that it happens as often as it does.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, genetics are genetics. It's tough to beat that.
Genetics are genetics.
Yeah.
Words you've never heard on this podcast before.
Yeah. Eagle at NBCUni.com if you want to send us an email. Thanks for all the ones we read today. And if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, any final words today?
I do.
Okay.
I do. So last night I was in Harrisburg, which is the state capital. I don't know if you knew that, of Pennsylvania. You're a Jersey guy, Trenton. But I
used to know all the state capitals.
Yeah. So I was at a venue called XL Live, playing with a band called Tisbury's from Philadelphia, opening for Neon Trees. It was the last show of Tisbury's Neon Trees tour, and incredible venue, XL Live, new, beautiful, great sound, kind of like a little Union Transfer-esque, maybe a little smaller. I think 1,400 fit in there. And it was just a blast. Great people, great sound, fun night. And so just want to thank all the nice people from Harrisburg who were so supportive of a band that they, that's the thing when you're an opening band, nobody knows you. All the Neon Trees fans were really into them. And the Neon Trees guys were super nice. And they were good too. They're pretty. You a Neon Trees guy at all?
I've listened. I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I've listened. Yeah.
Yeah, they were very, very impressive, very loud. So it was a good night in Harrisburg, state capital.
Very cool. All right. For Reuben Frank, I'm Dave Zangaro. This has been Eagle Eye, presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.